Hi, and welcome to Color Your Home Happy. I'm Justine, founder and creative mind behind Rainbow Shaker, a colorful interior design studio in London. My goal is to spread joy and happiness through the design of cheerful interiors. If, like me, you think that we need a colorful bubble to escape the daily gloom, then this podcast is definitely for you. Each episode, I will be welcoming well-known guests from various colorful backgrounds. You won't find us speaking about the right way to use colors. In this podcast, I want to help you trust your intuition and give you all the confidence you need when designing interiors full of dopamine. Hello everyone and welcome to a new vibrant episode of Color Your Home Happy. I'm Justine, your host and vibrant interior designer. I have the pleasure today of chatting about the interior world and also fashion world with an incredible guest, Kitty Joseph, a London-based contemporary women's wear designer. She also consults for international fashion brands on color and print design. Hi, Kitty.
Hello, lovely to see you, Justine.
Likewise. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. It's wonderful to be in your colourful, gorgeous, uplifting home.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed nosing around.
It's really a pleasure to have you here, and I just love this outfit.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I made an effort for you, and your cats.
I think she approved.
Oh God, I'm glad.
You can't see it, but my cat is looking at us from across the room, making sure that everything is on point.
Absolutely, very exacting cats, I think. Tough audience for sure.
Yeah. So tell us more about your design journey.
Oh gosh, well, it's been quite a long journey. When I actually sit down and think about it, I think people think of me primarily as a fashion designer, but my training is as a textile and print designer. And then kind of realized that I had ideas about what I wanted those prints to do. I didn't necessarily want to hand them over to someone else to cut up and put into different garments. So I started designing prints with body shape in mind, and that kind of led me to applying print and colour to clothing. And then that sort of expanded over the last few years, and with collaborations like Your Story, I've translated some designs quite literally from prints that have been applied to the body to interior products. So that's been a really exciting journey for me.
Yeah, that's a cool crossover.
Yes,
fashion and interior.
Exactly. And in a way, it's sort of all about colour. That's what my work comes back to. So it's just about translating colour from one medium to another. And actually the joy of kind of bringing colour to interior products like the rug, it's just colour on a bigger scale. Colour fills your eye line as you look around.
I even read about Lady Gaga, your first digital print collection.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So, well, actually, it was my graduate collection when I was at Royal College, was all about being immersed in colour. So the prints were about kind of cloaking yourself in colour and having a kind of colour experience. And I think that colour can be really, what I'm sure we'll talk about it today, it can kind of really affect your mood and your mood. So I came up with this idea to have, that saying rose-tinted spectacles, putting on your rose-tinted spectacles to see the world in, a better light.
La vie en rose.
La vie en rose. Yes, that's it. Exactly. I thought, wouldn't it be lovely to, being a born and bred Londoner who's like used to grey skies and rain, to have some spectacles that are sort of almost like tropical sunset, like a play on La vie en rose, or the rose-tinted spectacles that would mean that you could put them on and kind of transport yourself. And the Lady Gaga glasses were from that sort of idea. They were actually a blue gradient that went from dark to light, left to right.
So when you looked from right to left,
the colours were changing, the shades changing. So that was wonderful. She's a great person in that she's always had her eye, on the horizon. She's always been looking at what new designers are doing, and she's been very supportive of them. So that was a great thing.
Wow.
Yeah, coming out of college, I was very excited about that. It's very encouraging.
You also had a connection to France, actually, because you were leading the former designer Colette.
Yes, yeah. The wonderful Colette store. I was very excited because back when I was selling my collections wholesale, I stocked in Colette in Paris, which was really a wonderful experience. And there's another sort of connection there because I have a wonderful friend called Fred Butler, who's an accessories designer, and she had a connection with Colette, and she came to support me with my showroom in Paris, and Sarah from Colette turned up. So I'm pretty sure that was Fred who made that introduction, which I'm very grateful for. Fred's also an extremely colourful and talented person. You should check out Fred's work too.
And how has been your journey with colour?
My colour journey? Well, I suppose right from the beginning, playing around with my crayons as a kid and rejoicing in colour in the way that children do. I think that's not exclusive to me. I think colour is something that young people gravitate towards fearlessly. As we get older, sometimes culturally, we maybe learn to be less brave and more conservative. But I like to think that maybe I've kept hold of that childlike wonder and gravitation towards colour.
Yeah.
I suppose my upbringing and like my family is quite creative. My dad was a jeweler, so I used to love going in and into his office in Hatton Garden and sifting through gemstones. I never got to look at the really expensive ones, but I used to love sort of looking at that kind of pure mineral colour. And my mum was an illustrator. She did a lot of work when we were growing up, so I'd come home and see her work. And both her parents were artists and met at art school, so we had lots of paintings around the house. So I suppose it's always felt like taking a creative route didn't feel an unusual route for me to take. And I think I enjoy working with colour every day. I've always gravitated towards it, not just because I like to wear and design colourful clothes, but because the actual process of designing and being able to spend time playing with my crayons, basically, like as an adult and getting away with it.
Yeah. Do you have one favorite color, or are you drawn to like every color?
I suppose for me, the thing about colour is the way colours work together, how they interact. So like your pink velvet jacket just looks amazing against that sort of limey, greeny yellow. The idea of a colour in isolation, I obviously design with colour very much in combination. But I would say that maybe at the moment, I love greens and pinks together. It makes me think of that sort of, a flower in bloom against sort of dark green, the kind of excitement of that contrast. And I also love the kind of greens that you get with sort of new shoots, that they have this sort of really fresh, limey green of like possibility. Something's about to happen. Something's about to grow and burst into life. So
when you create a combination between colors, you create another emotion.
You are, yes, yeah. And those two colours are kind of having a kind of conversation. I think there's something very primal in a sort of emotional reaction and enjoyment of colour. I do think in Western countries, there is this kind of phenomenon. I think it's David Batchelor who's described it as chromophobia. I do see there's a resurgence in people being braver with colour and using colour in different ways in their homes. But there's definitely is a kind of snobbery around colour and in the idea that bright and bold colour is not serious or it's
not luxury,
childish, or it's not luxury. And I really disagree. And I think also colour's not always about bright colours. There's so much that can be expressed with so many different shades of colours. There's a whole spectrum of colour to express a spectrum of things, of feelings. And I think just dismissing colour entirely and always opting for white and beige and grey and black you're missing out on a lot of expressive potential and enjoyment, variety and depth.
Yeah, you're silencing a part of some emotions or some things
in a way,
need to be expressed. Today we are also delving into the intersection between fashion and home design. I think color is kind of a common language between those two worlds.
Yes, I think it is. When we went through COVID and everyone was sort of indoors, I think people were craving greens and blues and all these colours that we connect to bringing the outside in. And so I definitely noticed in interiors magazines and paint brands talking about colours, it was about shades of the outside that you can bring inside. And similarly, I think that in fashion, I've noticed people wearing those shades of blue, shades of greens, lots of greens. The interesting thing about the way people use colour in fashion and the way that they apply it to their homes is often people can be more conservative with colour in their spaces because they think, oh, well, you know, this is something that I'm going to be living with for a long time and I'm a bit afraid, you know, whereas maybe you might sort of go to a store and see a sort of wildly coloured jacket and think, oh, actually, you know, I'll go for it because I can always take it off. I do think that sometimes that fear of an idea of permanence within the home holding back from experimenting more is a shame, because ultimately, you know, with like painting a wall, that wall can always be repainted again. Or you can buy beautiful throws or, you know, big pieces of textiles that you can use in the home and dress in your home in the way that you dress yourself or wear a scarf. So I do think that what you do is so impressive, because in this space, I feel like there's no distinction between the way that you've dressed your home and the way that you dress yourself. There's no kind of barrier. It's sort of a free-flowing conversation, which I think is very inspiring. But I do see this move towards colour, like working with Floor Story and seeing people that they collaborate with. It's sort of interdisciplinary collaborations. It's about not having any set rules about what you can and can't put in a place. Yeah, it's about expressing yourself in the way that you might dress or the way that you might sort of put a playlist together. Or yeah, as someone who's worked mainly in fashion but who loves interiors, I'm sort of starting to see more of a cross-pollination. I don't know what you think, like whether you feel like people are becoming more bold in their homes.
Yeah, I think people tend to want to be more bold, still a bit scared for the home design.
Yeah.
People sometimes ask me, because you use a lot of colors, is there one color palette that you generally use? And in fact, you can't think like this, because it's like fashion. For me, I like to use sometimes color palette or colors that don't usually go together because they're kind of clashing. And then that's also making me think. And then I will express a different emotion when I'm looking at it, not like peaceful or something, but it's going to wake me up.
Yes, yeah.
And in fashion, when you're also mixing colors that are not creating an harmony together, sometimes you can create something completely different.
Yes, that's so true. And in a way, in theory, all colours can go together. You can just put them together. They're not going to be running away from each other anytime soon. So there's kind of no rules. But I love that idea of harmony and discord. In music, maybe as music's changed over the years, maybe more experimental composers started to clash or create what people perceived as clashing notes or discordant harmonies, and people found it very shocking. And then the taste evolved and it becomes something quite beautiful. And in the same way with colour, I think you could put two colours together that create a sort of friction, or like, you know, sometimes putting different colours together, they can kind of almost vibrate optically.
How is your inspiration going? Like when you're designing a collection, how do you get inspired?
Such a tricky question, because inspiration often comes from these sort of unconscious layers of things that you absorb in the world around you, things that you really like, or maybe an idea that you've had, or maybe even a craving that you've been having. I recently moved to Brighton and I realised that I was craving more blues and greens, I suppose. I've got the South Downs and I've got the sea there. And so I think sometimes your cravings for certain things become the inspiration that then feeds back into your work. I might start using those colours in my work. Like I said, people can be really inspiring. I love getting out in nature. I love flowers and plants, and I draw a lot. So I try to, when I can, get away on just a drawing holiday. I have some drawings up in my home actually that are from the trip to Marrakesh. I went there just to kind of record the colour and the light. That was a truly sort of colour immersion experience. The sunsets there were just incredible. Inspiration is not always just this lightning bolt that comes from above and it's specific. For me, it's just layers of influence of different things over time.
As an interior designer, I also get inspired by fashion, and I think it can also be the other way around.
Yes, I think that's very, very true. As I've got to sort of be more involved in interiors, I'm kind of realizing what opportunities there are out there for colouring your space in really, really unusual and interesting ways. And I feel like personally, I've been quite inspired. I've sort of, I mean, coming here today, I'm not that I'm going to nab all of your ideas, but there's definitely sort of there's the experience of coming to this space sort of is opening up my eyes to like possibilities of, you know, what you can do.
Yeah, there is also a crossover in home design. We have the interior designer for fashion. We have personal stylist or personal shopper.
Yes,
that also helps you find something that is working with your personality, with your skin, also your morphology. For me, the space is also like a person. When you're dressing it up, for example, I'm going to look at the morphology of the space, which is the architectural features of the space, and use that to design the space. And it's the same when you're dressing up. You want to put your best features.
You want to celebrate the form, really.
Like space has an energy in itself. Sometimes you really have to deal with the space as if it's alive and just give it like kind of nurturing process, close to a therapist.
I bet it is. That kind of just makes life exciting because every project is always going to be different. You're not just sort of arriving and, you know, cladding up some space and making it look like your last project. Yeah, you're looking at the practical challenges of working with a physical space, but you're also meeting a human being that's living in it and maybe encouraging them to do what would make them happy. And sometimes I think when people are decorating their spaces, often they could be thinking, what is the tasteful thing to do, whatever that taste even means? And what would my friends think? Or what would my neighbours think? Or what would be impressive? But actually, the most important thing is, what do you need? What makes you feel good? To be honest, you know, to hell with everyone else, because, you know, you're the one that's going to be wearing the dress. You're the one that's going to be coming home to your space every day.
It's funny because when I was a child, my dream was to be a fashion designer.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with fabric. When I see fabric, I want to touch everything and like textures. I also learned how to sew with my mom. And then I couldn't really have a choice of career. But still on the side, I love to upcycle clothes. I have a little drawing book. Then I'm just drawing like clothes and then trying to make them after. And it's nourishing also my interior design inspiration, because if I didn't have this hobby on the side, it wouldn't also have given me the push to start my interior design career.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And you see possibilities, don't you? Your world kind of expands. And I think sort of following your passion, isn't it interesting where it can take you? I mean, you've been on quite a journey when you think about it. Yeah. For me, having the opportunity to work with Floor Story was amazing because it's that process has kind of opened my eyes and got me really excited about dressing spaces and bringing colour to an interior in a sort of larger scale. And it's made me think about that kind of crossover of colour from the body into space, this fluid space. I think if you have the interest and the passion in a certain area, there's always ways of it crossing into new fields, I think.
Also a crossover, like fabric between fashion and home, fabric, textiles, patterns.
Yes, it's really interesting because I was looking for a sofa recently and I noticed there was this real crossover of the kind of bobbly, like a boucle, quite sort of textured. And I'd seen lots of people wearing these textured jackets. It was this trend that had so directly crossed over. You could have your boucle coat and come home and just chuck it on your boucle sofa. Really design your life around one texture if you really wanted.
For both worlds, the fabric, it's like creating kind of an immersive experience when you're entering into a home that has a lot of textures and fabrics that you want to touch or that you feel is going to be comfy.
The chroma and the optic rugs that I did with them, they were translations of pleating, like trying to translate that idea of like the three-dimensional surface and the light and shadow effects that you get with pleats into the rug. Yeah, that's the chroma rugs. There's like 38 shades in those and they're all hand carved. What I love about them is that if you take your shoes and socks off and walk across them, you get like a lovely foot massage. I think there's something about the carved shape, each colour catches the light from different angles and different ways. And so you get this kind of depth and richness of colour in the same way that with velvet you get within that jacket, there's this very, very intense pink and then where the light's sort of reflecting off it. It's like a glossy Barbie pink.
Yeah.
It's pretty mesmerizing. Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm wearing this, I'm meeting people and they're like, "Oh, I just want to hug you because you look so soft."
Not because they like you, but because you look soft.
Yeah.
Kind of very human to want to kind of reach out and touch things, isn't it? Just not with sticky fingers, not with jam on your fingers. No. The thing about colour is that when you apply it to texture and different surfaces, it completely transforms and becomes, that sort of shade of pink, if it was applied to like a flat surface or a wall, would just do something completely different. There is something really interesting about texture and form and surface, and also light. I mean, all colours agree in the dark, don't they?
A lot of people are actually colorblind.
Yeah, so they can't see certain shades.
Yeah. And in fact, like when you're adding different textures, you can try to translate the story of a space or of yourself with fabric. And they can also see, like they can see the fabric, they can touch the fabric and give them the general feeling or emotion you want to translate.
Yeah.
So, Kitty, do you have a favorite design project?
Well, I'd have to say that my favorite design project and I think collaboration was the first rug that I did with Floor Story, which was the Chroma rug, which was pretty much a direct translation of the Chroma skirt to a circular rug. So I took one of my skirts into their studio and laid it out on the floor and pretty much colour matched the design exactly as the skirt was. And the rug was a direct translation of the effect of that skirt laid out flat on the floor as a sort of flat piece of textile design. So that was really exciting. I suppose a lot of people think of me and associate me with the rainbow. But the thing about that skirt is kind of exploring areas of the spectrum, but then also making kind of unexpected jumps. So one of my favourite parts of that print is there's like a sort of orange and a green that kind of clash. And I find that my eye, whenever I look at that design, my eyes always go back to that particular point in the way that our eyes have been going to that point in the mural, that there's something in it that sort of draws your eye to it and is very exciting. So yeah, the different Chroma rug colourway that I developed are kind of explorations of the spectrum, or I guess they're kind of explorations of different types of colour harmonies that are sometimes unexpected. They're not just a continuous red, yellow, pink, green. Do you know what I mean?
Like what you see in a rainbow, but it's something that is
the rainbow's already designed by Mother Nature. Yeah, so that was and I also think it was just a really wonderful collaboration because I felt that I was going for the first time into an interiors project with a really wonderful company that were just very free rein and very encouraging and very happy for me to pursue any sort of wild ideas that I had. And then also the great thing about Simon was that he saw the pleats and was thinking, how can we translate that effect? And he came up with the idea of the carving, and we gave the manufacturers a real headache because I don't think they wanted to do it in the first place. They said, what happens when you get to the center of the rug? We were just like, just try it. It was like a really beautiful, seamless translation of design from an item of clothing to something that styles a place. There's the primary chroma, there's also a pastel chroma rug, and there's a pink and grey, and they all have very, very different feelings. Like, when you look at them, they transport you to a very different mood. But if I were to say the one that I'm most fond of is the primary colourway, because it's very much a happy colourway. It's a colour your home happy colourway.
And how did you came up with all these colourways? Was it like already in your mind?
So I have those little notes on my phone, which sometimes when I'm coming up with a kind of a more multicolored palette, that I'll be like, oh, this is the point where I'd like this color to clash into this color. And it's like hop skipping into something else unexpected. I'll be walking down the street and I'll see someone with, I don't know, like a really weird, and this is how I'll describe them in my phone. I'll take a note, like a sort of a weird pale minty green and a really sort of deep claret red combination. Or if I'm really naughty, I'll sort of like surreptitiously take a zoom into someone's like backpack against their coat and then take a picture. So it's like sometimes there's sort of random colorways that just excite me. Like actually I was walking down Brighton seafront the other day and there was like a red apple color car against a lime green painted surface, and it was just like this huge shiny car on this like green kind of neon painted tarmac, and I was like, oh my god, that's an amazing color combination. So I was sort of freaking out the neighbours standing there taking pictures of the car. They probably thought I was like a car thief or something. So yeah, I think there's sometimes that just enjoyment of little moments of color. Sometimes they might be something that someone's really carefully thought about, or it might just be an accidental combination that's, you know, someone happens to have parked their car next to that. And sometimes it's also just probably working and listening to a certain type of music, and it's the color palette goes in a direction that is influenced by the song that I'm listening to. I think also what you were talking about before about, you know, colors going together that aren't meant to go together. Often it's like once you have put them together, your taste changes and you start to really like them, and sort of you get braver, don't you? You play, there's room for playing, there's room for going, oh, I wonder what would happen if you do that. The world's not going to end if you put two unusual colours together, and you can always take them apart.
Yeah, obviously.
So colour can just almost light up your brain in some way. It definitely fires things up, up in my head anyway. Actually, I've got a new project or a new sort of special release with Floor Story coming up, which I don't probably not allowed to talk about, but the colours in that are very much about that idea of being connected to the colours that we need, the colours that kind of nourish us.
Do you have any tips or advice for our listeners?
Well, I suppose I go back to trying to think about the way that you dress or the way that you design your home or what you surround yourself with. You really try to go back to what it is that you need and what it is that you love and what serves you, not what impresses other people or or tries to fit into tastes or trends. That you think deeply about
What makes you vibing?
Yeah, what helps you in your day to day and what makes you joyful. That would be my main takeaway, is that sometimes we get so bogged down, we make other people happy or perform in a certain kind of way or impress, or sometimes we just get a bit disconnected with what we like because our lives are so busy. And so you might not necessarily work in a creative field and you haven't given yourself the time to think about these things. I think that's what I'd say, is just give yourself time to think about what you love and try and surround yourself with it in what you design, or the way you put things into your home, the way that you dress, and have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun, enjoy it. You can put an outfit on that makes you feel like you can face the day, then do it. And don't worry if someone will give you a dirty look because they think you're too colourful.
Also, you can spread the joy. Even when people say, I hate it, or you're too carnival, then it makes them feel something that they want to push back.
You'd rather sort of have some sort of reaction, because a reaction's interesting. At least it's like a kind of response. I was listening to a musician talking about this, that he would rather that people were like, oh, I don't like that at all, than they were like, oh, yeah, whatever.
And also the thing about experimenting is also key.
It is. And trying to get back to that place of being playful and thinking, I'm not sure about this, I wonder what will happen if, and then just trying it and seeing where it takes you. And by all means, I'm not always feeling brave, so I have to kind of talk myself back into that place. I have to say to myself sometimes, just try and see where this sort of experiment takes you.
Yeah, playing with color helps me gain more confidence, feel myself more, and now people are like, oh, you're an extrovert. In fact, I'm sometimes pushing myself to wear something, and I'm like, I know people are gonna say sometimes not nice things to me, but I need this today, so I'm gonna wear it no matter what.
Yes, yeah, and it's, people can always look away, but I feel in general people respond to color in a really positive way. There's something magnetic about color. It can often be a conversation starter. You know, sometimes I do feel a bit nervous about doing things like this, or have to go to a party and have to go on my own. It's a sort of work thing, and I put on something colourful, and not only does it help me sort of step out the door and feel more confident, it means that when you get to the party, people do tend to come towards you.
Yeah.
they tend to gravitate, and it's a conversation starter, and it loosens things up. And I think often wearing colour can signal a friendliness and an openness. For me, I'd say a great party hack for anyone who does sometimes get shy in social situations or has to go somewhere on their own.
How can listeners can get in touch with you and purchase your beautiful creations?
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I mean, you can just head over to our website, which is kittyjoseph.com, and then our socials as well, at kitty_Joseph, and it's Joseph with a PH. And you can also just reach out to us if you have any questions. You can email us at info@kittyjoseph.com. It's a pretty much open doors policy. So if anyone has any questions or wants to find out more. Oh, and of course, head over to floorstory.co.uk to see our collaboration rugs, which are the Optic and Chroma collections.
So if you want to dress up in Kitty Joseph's creation and dress your space you can.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure to talk about the crossover between fashion and interior design. And we can see that those worlds are really similar. They're really kind of merging sometimes.
I think they are even more now.
It was an absolute pleasure. And I wish you all the best. I can't wait to learn about the new collaboration with
Yes, I'm very excited.
So stay tuned.
Oh, yes, stay tuned.
And I wish you and the listeners a colorful day. See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, don't hesitate to subscribe, rate, or review on the different listening platforms. To say hello and get all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at rainbow.shaker. And if you want to check out my services, you can go to my website, www.rainbowshaker.com. Thanks again, and I wish you all a very colorful day. See you next time!